everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be telling you guys about a great website for where you can get reference images for your artwork, and I'm also going to be sharing an offer with you guys so that you can get thousands of royalty free images that you can go and use in your artwork now completely for free. I will also be demonstrating this kitten that I'm drawing in colored pencils and talking you through how I drew that, and for this I used a reference image that I downloaded from this website. So today's video is being sponsored by GraphicStock, and GraphicStock are kind enough to be giving us 7 days completely unlimited access to all of their photos to download and use in our projects completely for free. So to get the 7 days unlimited access completely free, just go to graphicstock.com/YouTube or click in the link in the description, which will be right at the top, and you can start getting your 7 days unlimited access where you can go and download as many images as you want. So GraphicStock has over 350,000 images, which means that it is actually the largest unlimited download library of graphics, photos, vectors and illustrations around. So what that means is that you don't have to purchase the photos individually. Once you become a member, you can download all of the photos on the website that you want. So I knew that I wanted to draw a kitten, so I decided to look for all of the kitten images on the website, and there were so many, but there was lots of them that were vectors as well as photos. So I made sure that I just selected the photos, and I decided to do this really pretty kitten in the pink flowers, and I just thought it was a really nice composition and that it was a lot of detail and it was really going to be fun to do. So I just clicked on that and I downloaded that one, and what I loved about these images were that they were such high quality. So this one was 12 megabytes, which means that you can get such an insane amount of detail in that, and you can zoom it in really close and see every little hair. You can also refine your searches by category, so there's a nature and wildlife category. So if you don't know what you want to draw, but you know you want to draw an animal, then you can just click on that category, and there's so many different high quality reference photos for you to choose from. So make sure you go over to graphicstock.com/YouTube and start your 7-day trial. There's really no reason not to. It's completely free. If you like it, then you can go and sign up for their annual plan, and if not, you've still got all those images that you've downloaded from your free trial to use. Okay, so now I'm going to talk you through how I drew the kitten, and I'm starting off by doing the background. And for this I used the Caran D'ache Luminance colour pencils and the Faber-Castell polychromos. And I'm going to use the Faber-Castell polychromos a bit later when I do all the detail. So the fur and the actual kitten I used a lot of the Faber-Castell polychromos on. So in terms of time, this took me a very long time to do. It took me about 40 to 50 hours, and a lot of that time was spent on the background. So I'm starting off by doing the blurred portion of the background, and this takes so many layers to build up to make it really blurry, and I'm using the solvent to blend out this background. So I'm starting off by using the Caran D'ache Luminance on the background, and I'm building up a very light layer, and once I've done this I went in with the Zest It pencil blend, and I used that to blend it out with a paintbrush. And it's really important that you make sure that you have enough of the pigment down before you go in and blend it all out, but it doesn't really matter so much at the start to get really smooth layers, because I just build up layers and layers. I think I did about 5 or 6 layers on this and blended it out with the solvent to get it really smooth. So my first layer wasn't smooth at all, but you just have to persevere and carry on, and it will get smoother and smoother. And when I was building up the layers and getting it smoother, I tended to do the first layer quite dark, darker than it needed to be, and then I go on with the white colour pencil, and I use that white to kind of blend it all together and make it really smooth and blurry. And I apply the white colour pencil over the majority of the background and then blend it out with the solvent, and then I'll go back in with the white pencil and so on until I get it the smoothness that I want. But I make sure that the first layer I do, I make sure that it's really dark so that I can add the white on top without it getting too light. So that blurred portion of the background alone took me a whole day to do. And now moving on to doing the leaves and also the flowers as well. And when I was drawing these flowers, it's very peculiar because a lot of the petals didn't look like typical petal shapes for the flower. So you have to kind of get your head around it and just copy what you can see. Even if it doesn't necessarily look like a flower petal, just copy the shapes that you can see and it will all come together in the end. Just make sure that you put the shadows in where they need to be and the highlights. It doesn't matter so much that all the colours are exactly the same, it matters about the contrast. So whether you've got your shadows in the right place and your highlights in the right place, so you have that contrast. So for example, if you went in and edited a photo, you can do a lot of adjustments like changing the colours, changing the hues, and it would still look really realistic because it's still got that contrast. It's when you go and mess up the contrast and stuff that it starts to look a bit cartoony and not as realistic. So I'm just adding a base layer to all of those flowers and all of the leaves and stuff like that. So this isn't the finished part of any of these, this is just the first layer, and I'm going to build up more and more layers and add more detail as I get to the final layers. So in my first layer, I just like to establish where the shadows are, the highlights are, and just mark in some rough details just so that I know where they'll be in the future. And again, when I'm doing this, I'm using a mixture of the Faber-Castell Polychromos and the Caran D'ache Luminance. So there's no particular reason why I'm using different ones. It just might be if there's a colour that I really want to use and it's not in the Caran D'ache Luminance because it's a smaller set and it's in the Faber-Castell Polychromos, then I'll just use the different colours from each to give me a larger variety of colours to choose from. And when I'm doing this, I'm using circular motions. I'm making sure my pencils are really sharp. I had to empty my sharpener so many times because I sharpened so many pencils whilst doing this. And that's really important to make sure that before you blend out with the solvent, that you've filled in as much of the white grain as you can so that it blends really smoothly. Otherwise, you'll get some white grain showing through and it won't be as good as it possibly could be, and it might make it harder to get it smoother when you add additional layers on top. So what I love about the Caran D'ache Luminance pencils is that they blend out so nicely with the solvent. Because they're creamy and waxy, they kind of just blend together really seamlessly when you use the solvent. And I actually prefer how they blend out than the Faber-Castell Polychromos. So I feel like if I did the background just with Faber-Castell Polychromos, it would have taken me so many more layers to get it looking blurry than it actually did with using the Caran D'ache Luminance. So I was really inspired to draw a kitten just because recently I did that cat eye tutorial and I really enjoyed doing them, and I haven't drawn an animal in such a long time and I really fancied doing one. So I decided that I really wanted to do a bigger piece. So this was 12 by 16 inches, which was actually the biggest piece in colour pencils that I've done, and I really enjoyed it. Even though it took me so much longer than other ones, it was just so much more rewarding and I really enjoyed doing it. So now I'm doing the second layer on the background, and this is where I'm making sure that the structure is spot on, so they look like they've got more of a structure to them rather than just blobs, which they look like when I first blended it out. So I'm adding in where all the little structures of the petals are, so the dips and the grooves in the petals and the shadows and the highlights again. And if you want to brighten something up and make it whiter, when you add in the white coloured pencil, don't burnish it, just add in that white pencil, blend it out, then add more white and then blend that out, and keep building it up so that you don't damage the tooth of the paper, and it will get it much lighter that way because you're slowly lightening and lightening it up. And it might take you several layers to do that, but it'll be a lot better because you're not damaging the tooth of the paper. And that's something that I really didn't want to do with this one, because if I damaged the tooth of the paper here, I wouldn't have been able to get all the details that I needed to get in, which would have made it not so nice in the end. So now I'm just working on the flower, and there were so many different colours in this, but it was really pretty. Even if it just looks pink to your eye, make sure that you pick out all those different colours. So there was a lot of purples and blues in this as well, and adding those really makes it pop and look realistic because it's not just one flat colour of pink. There's a lot of the different colours which really make it stand out. What I found as well is that when I was doing these flowers, I had to come back in towards the end once I've got the cat in, because it's hard to judge how dark you need to go. So on parts of the cat around the flowers, they were very dark, which showed me how light the petals actually were when I'd done them. So I had to darken them down a bit. And that's okay. Don't just feel like once you've done one part, you have to move on. You can always come back to it and tweak it a bit if you need to. So just make sure that you're flexible on how you're going to do it, and don't just think that bit's done, so I'm just going to move on and not go back to it. Make sure you keep looking at your different areas and make sure that they make sense and they've got the right contrast and are in balance with all the other parts of the drawing. So I really love doing this image, and I'm definitely going to be using a lot more images from GraphicStock, and I've got so many that I've already downloaded as well, because it's so hard to find royalty-free images that are such high quality, and especially with wildlife there was so many images to do with animals and they were really good shots, and also there was lots of images of people. So if you need to practice doing your faces and your anatomy and stuff like that, it's really good for that as well. as well as just other things. So if you're building a website and you need some vectors and images, or you're doing thumbnails and you need to do lots of little images, then there's so many to choose from that you can just whack in on your projects as well. It doesn't just have to be pictures for your artwork, you can put them in all your different projects as well. Okay, so now I've moved on to the cat itself, and so I'm starting off by outlining the darkest parts of my drawing. So I use the black and I'm outlining where the eyes are and also the main markings of the fur to give me some idea of where the shadows are and therefore where the highlights will be. And then I'm going in with a brown ochre, I think it was, and I'm using this to establish the colour and the base foundation layer of the fur. And then I'm going to go in with some darker browns and stuff like that and just start building up the shadows and the highlights and the basic structure of the fur. And I don't need to burnish this, I don't need to apply a lot of pressure because I'm going to be blending this out with the solvent. And it's really important that you don't burnish, because if you burnish then you won't be able to blend it out and get all the little details on top. So make sure that you use a very light hand. I'm using lines in the direction that the fur would be going, so make sure you look at the direction of the fur and follow that rather than just doing lines in all different directions. So as you can see, I blended it out with the Zested pencil blend and it filled in all that white grain, and that's not finished, that's just the base layer, but I wanted to get the base layer in everywhere before I went in and defined and refined some of the areas on the face. So I will be going in and adding all the individual fur, and this is really just the beginning of doing the cat. So now I'm working on the arms and the body of the kitten, and underneath his chin it was very dark and it was very blurry. So I'm going to have to blur that area out later on, and this is because the focal point was on the face, so that area was slightly blurred, and so was the top parts of the arms of the cat. So again, I'm just adding in the base layer. I'm not worrying so much about getting all those little individual hairs. I've done a few to show the direction of where the hairs will be going, but I'll be doing that in a second when I add in all the detail. And now I'm going back onto the kitten's face and I'm adding in another layer on the eyes. And what's really nice is that the colours go over so smoothly on top of that first layer, and it comes off in such a rich layer as well. And as you can see, the eyes just popped from that second layer. So I added a bit more blue and I added the white for the highlights as well. And then I'm going in with the white Caran D'ache Luminance coloured pencil because this is really opaque, and I did this extremely sharply, and I'm just adding bits of hair and lightening up some of the highlighted areas. So when you use the solvent it darkens up the areas a bit, so I'm going back in with that white pencil. I'm adding all the little fur marks, and for the details I'm using the black polychromos and some brown polychromos as well, and I'm using them to add in all the little fur marks on top of those dark areas. So I've got the basic structure of where all the shadows need to be, and then I just use those polychromos to add in all the little hairs and details. So then I'm working back on the body as well, and I'm adding in those darker shadows. So it's kind of grey and a bit black under there, but they had bits of brown, so I made sure that I glazed brown colours over it as well, just to make the colours balance out. You don't want different hues in different places. You need to use the same range of colours across the whole of the body. So now I'm just going in and tweaking the different areas, making sure everything makes sense. So under his right arm, it looked a bit weird because it looked like it was flopped over the flower but not touching it because there wasn't enough shadow. So I made sure I added more shadow under where that flower is, so where his arm is going over the flower, so it actually makes it look like his arm is on top of that flower, because it just looked really weird because there wasn't enough shadow on it. And I'm also darkening up the main flower at the bottom as well, so I noticed once I had that cat in, that there wasn't enough contrast in the flower. I needed to darken up the shadows and make there be a bit more contrast in the petals. And I'm just adding in the whiskers, and yeah, I'm done with this one. So this piece isn't 100% finished. I still need to add in the highlights, but I used to do that with a gel pen, but I really don't want to do that anymore because it's not as archival. So I've ordered this thing from Brush and Pencil, which is the titanium white powder and the touch up texture, and this is really good because it's like a white paint once you mix them together, and it's also really archival and made for coloured pencils. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you check out that link in the description to get your 7 days free access to GraphicStock. Thanks for watching, and if you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my future drawings and tutorial videos. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!